Okay, I have a review this time for Stacks 3. Now, if you've watched a lot of my videos, you will probably remember I did a review for Stacks 2. This is a new updated version. Stacks, to put it simply, is basically a plugin for RapidWeaver. Now, RapidWeaver, if you don't know what that is, it's a Mac web design program to make websites, and I have reviewed RapidWeaver 6 previously. So if you don't know what RapidWeaver is, I refer you back to that video. So, RapidWeaver 6 on its own is a good program, but not as flexible as I, at least personally, and a lot of other people would like. So if you get Stacks 2, or in this case Stacks 3, it adds a lot more functionality and it adds the ability to add more add-ons to the program, which are called stacks. So the main stack program itself is called stacks, and then the individual add-ons you add to it are called stacks. It will become more clear when I start using the program and showing you what it does and how to use it. But let's just take a look first off. Let's just get preferences out of the way. You can, in the new version of Stacks, have your library, which is where you get your various individual stacks from, as a popover that pops out and pops over the top, kind of like it did in Stacks 2. Or by default, it's a sidebar, which is like the sidebar in the inspector. It works like the inspector, basically. Or as its own window, or just whatever you used last time. I like the popover, personally. You can do the same thing with the info panel over here. Sidebar is default and for the inspector, and the info panel I like to just keep it on the sidebar, whereas with library I have it on popover. You can have it close on startup. So do you want the library open by default when you open RapidWeaver and you open your project, or do you want it to be closed? And the same with the info panel. How I have it set is I have the library closed at first until I want to use it, but I have the info panel open by default when I launch the project. You can hide and show various library groupings, such as built-in stacks, templates, partials, which I'll go into later, and partials is a new feature of Stacks 3. All Stacks library groups here, and if you don't want to show the images folder, you can leave it unticked. Shortcuts here, some options for HTML. Do you want stack meta tags included? Do you want comments in HTML? Do you want to remove the white space in your HTML files, which is a good idea to help make it just a little bit quicker and snappier? And do you want to load your jQuery and your font? Awesome if you're using it. Do you want to use those JavaScript files locally, basically upload the file yourself to your host, or do you want it to, each time the page is loaded, it grabs it from an external website? Personally, I just leave these off and I use individual files myself. And then we have advanced home page preview in Finder. Now what I find is, I think this is off by default, and if it's off, when you go to here it is, projects window, it has a little thumbnail of your project, and that's basically a thumbnail from the home page of your project. If you're using a stack page as your home page, as your index file, it may be blank unless you go here and turn this on. So I turn it on. It may slow down the performance of your project and opening RapidWeaver, things like that. It's possible. So if you have performance issues, you may want to turn this off. Otherwise, I recommend you turn it on. You can enable the developer console from here as well. I don't need that. I leave it off. So this is a basic blank stacks page. As you see, drop stacks here. So if we want to do that, we go to the library and let's have a look at some of the stacks. Well, in fact, let's have a look over here. What are these? These are basically tabs of groups. So we have stacks, and that is basically all of your stacks, including third-party stacks. You then have partials. I'll explain that later. You then have templates such as columns and pull quote, read more, paragraph. If you've seen Stacks 2, you'll know what all of these are. Your images in your project file. Any stacks you've marked as your favorite. Like in Stacks 2, I used this quite a lot. A third-party plugin, third-party stack called Responsive Grids by one little developer or designer. Anyway, I used it a lot, including on the index page, on the main front page. However, because columns now that come built into Stacks 3 are responsive, I actually don't necessarily need to use it. I can use a 2-column stack for what I need. So I've actually replaced the responsive grids areas on my site with the built-in 2-columns stack. That is because I just like to, if something works out of the box, if it works as a built-in stack, I prefer to use the built-in stack rather than having my website rely too heavily on lots and lots of third-party stacks. That doesn't really matter. It's just a personal thing. And I'll go into the responsiveness again later. So let's start off by looking at this one. This one here is built in. These are all the ones that come free, built into Stax3. When you buy Stax3, you don't have to buy any others. These are included. Basic stack for text. So you drag this on and you can just type basically. It's just basically like a text box in a word processor. But you have some options here such as color and image. This is to add a background image behind the text into the stack. Not the whole stack page, but the stack itself. Border color, width, do you want to round the corners off? So let's just play around here. There we go. Then let's round the corners off. You can see now the rounded edges on the corner. If we preview it, there, that's the rounded corners. Now, I quite like to do that quite a bit, although I don't think I've used that a lot on my actual site, which is odd because I normally like having round corners on stuff. Anyway, you can hide this stack. This is the responsive part. Now, say this is an element you know you want to show on large screens such as desktops and tablets, but you know it wouldn't look right on a mobile phone, and so you've got another stack that does it for the mobile side of things. Well, we can disable the stack on mobiles. So if somebody's viewing it on a mobile, this stack will no longer display. Let's actually see if it works in the preview. Okay, we're viewing this full size basically as a desktop. Now let's look at it as an iPhone. You see, because we hit it on mobiles, it's invisible on the iPhone layout, but it's back there. That can come in very handy. I haven't used it, I haven't hidden anything on mobiles, etc. on my personal website, but it could come in very, very handy. Now, if we then made another one of these, in fact, let's just let's just actually add another one and say this is a different version of the other stack, but we've edited it differently to look better on a mobile. We can then say, okay, we want this on a mobile. Let's not click this. Let's click the other two. And on this one, we have it displayed on these two, but not the phone. This one then on the phone, but not the others. You see what I mean? Okay, so let's go back to the library. We then have Markdown. That is really a topic of its own. I'm not going to go into Markdown. If you know what Markdown code, etc. is, Markdown formatting, this is how you can add some Markdown to your styles page, your stacks page. Then you have HTML. So if you have some HTML code you want to add to your page, this is an embed code or whatever, you'd use this, drop it on. And there's an example of a list in HTML using UL and LI tags. Then if we preview it here, you can see it's formatted as a list using HTML. You don't have to use things as simple as that. You can even use, like I say, embed codes, etc. Now we have image. This is how you can just add a simple image file to your page. There isn't a huge amount of different options to this, apart from I will note that you can hide it on different devices under responsive like you could with text. We have load text and images from the cloud. I'm not going to go into a huge amount about that, but it's basically loading external files. Then we have columns. Now, in Stax2, if you wanted your website to be responsive, you couldn't use the built-in columns and grids in layout. Because let me demonstrate. Here's columns. Now, this one is using grid. Hold on a sec. This one here is using 2 columns in Stax3. As you can see, we have options here for hiding, like I showed you on images and the text, but we have stacked columns. Now, because we only have mobile phone text, what happens is if you're viewing this on a desktop or a tablet, a larger screen, these 2 HTML images I've loaded using some HTML code, there you go, they load like this, side by side. But then if you display it on a mobile, normally if it wasn't responsive like in Stacks 2, this one here would be hanging off the side of the screen and it'd be cut off and you couldn't see it all. And that just looks terrible and it doesn't really work. So using Stacks 3, we can have it set to display stacked columns on a mobile. So if you're using this on a small screen, this one, instead of being hanging off the screen, it will be underneath this one instead. It will stack them on top of each other, this one on top, then this one underneath, so you can see the whole thing on a mobile. So columns are now responsive in Stacks 3, like they should be. But grids, if we go here, the grid option, which is similar to columns, but not quite, that does not seem to be responsive still. Not sure why. But if we select this one, this is the grid. This is basically what I created here, but using grid instead of 2 columns. We can hide it responsively. So we can hide it on a mobile like we could with text and images. But as you can see, there is no stacked columns layout. So let's take a look in preview. Now, on a desktop, they look very similar. This big gap is only because of the margin settings I have. I haven't tweaked the margins and padding, but they're side by side. Grids are side by side, columns are side by side. Now let's preview it on an iPhone. Because 2 columns, the stack built in called 2 columns is responsive, look what's happened. They've stacked on top of each other, so they look great on a mobile. Look at grids. Grids is still not responsive, and therefore the second one image here has overlapped and looks terrible, and you can't read it all, you can't see it all. So that is the only thing still. They say that Stacks 3 is responsive, and about 99% of it is, but if you want to use grid, you can't. It's not responsive. You need to either use a third-party stack still called Responsive Grids, or a similar one by another developer, or the workaround in most cases, at least for me, is you can use 2 columns. If you use a built-in 2 columns, you can do the same thing as what we're attempting with grids, but it will be responsive. So that is just something to bear in mind. Okay, back to our regular Stacks page. So these, again, are responsive. This, for whatever reason, doesn't seem to be, or I haven't had any luck with it. We then have float to float objects. Now this one here and this one here could come in quite handy, and I do use on my about page. Why would you want to use something like this? Well, you can float an image. So, for example, if you have an about page with lots and lots of text, not just a little bit like this, but it goes all the way down, and you have a profile picture here, the text will go down here and wrap underneath the image, like you do see on a lot of websites. I'm not going to bother putting in an image, etc., and lots of text, but I'm sure you know what I mean, well, me actually demonstrating it. The right is the same thing, just image is on the right corner, not the left corner. You can add a quote, you can create a button, or you can add a H3 header, which you might do for different sort of sections of your page. You might have like here, welcome, and then some text, or about me, then some text. Then you might have another one of these headers for a different section of the page, etc. And that is these are your built-in ones here. Content, layout, basic. Although if we go here to templates, these are also built in here. All of these under templates are built in as well. Now, down here we have some different options. This is to show it as a sidebar, which means it now looks like this, but it's on the left side. Or we can have it as a window, and it's a window that overlaps. Or we can have it as a popover, and popover is how it basically worked in Stacks 2, and I prefer that way of doing it. We then have details, which is this bit here. So if I select font awesome, you can see who it's by and version information. You can add it to favorites, which will put it in the favorites group. You can use a drop down to uninstall. I can't remember off the top of my head if you could uninstall from Stacks 2, but if you couldn't, you can now. if you want to uninstall a third-party stack, you can right-click on it or use the toggle and uninstall, and it will be gone and uninstalled. Now, updating works a lot better. In Stacks 2, you had to right-click, hit a button that says check for updates, then right-click again, basically, and it would have update would no longer be grayed out if there was one available, and you select it and install it. Well, now you can go to the updates panel, and it will look, I don't think I've got any updates to show you, but if there was any updates, it would look very much like the Mac App Store. They would be listed in a row here. If there's 5, there'd be 5 in a row here, and each one down here in this column would have an update button next to each of them, so you could either update each one individually like you can on the App Store, or you can select this button and just update the whole lot in one big go. It's both of those things you can do in the Mac App Store, so it's very similar. As you can see, none of the third-party stacks I have an update. Just to show you what some of the stacks I have installed here. Floating content, not sure why I even installed that now, because I don't use it on my personal site. Font Awesome, which allows you to add various weird sort of symbols and emblems, things like that to your site. That is free, I believe, if I remember rightly, and you can get it from one little designer. This one I use a lot. It's Icebox. It's basically an image box for your gallery. This is very useful. If you have one or more photo galleries on your website, this one is a must, because if you create a page, a normal page, photo album page in RapidWeaver, you add your images here in a row in this sort of grid here, and the trouble is with it is it doesn't open what you call a light box for images. There will be in the preview, I haven't added any so you can't see, but the point is there will be lots of thumbnails here. In fact, I'm just going to show you what I mean. Okay, I'm just going to show you what I mean about a light box for anybody that doesn't know. This is really a must if you have an album. Now, this album here of some of my photographs use the ice box plug stack. And so look what happens. Let's click on one. We want to see it bigger. Maybe we want some information like a caption. That doesn't normally load so slow, by the way. It opens it up as an overlay over the top of your page with a caption if you put one, and you can scroll across to the next one, and you can close the box here, and you're still on the same page. It's just an overlay. Now, with Photo Album built into RapidWeaver 6, what happens is you click on one of these, and it opens like this, but it opens in a separate web page. It isn't overlaid onto your page. It has a white background here. It has a close button, but it's a new page, and what happens is you close it, and instead of just closing the overlay, it basically goes back to your, in this case, photography.htm page. So you're loading a separate page each time you want to open the picture bigger, every time you click on a thumbnail, and then you're going back to a page. It's not an overlay, and I'm really quite surprised that they haven't changed that already in a free update to RapidWeaver. It looks quite unprofessional, it looks very clunky and old. Well, the way around that is to use a stacks page. Then what you do, I have a review for this, but basically you add a container, which is basically where you add each of the thumbnails in, and then for each thumbnail you drag an inner and add the image. And if you're interested in that, I have a review on my YouTube channel for Icebox Stack. Then I have things like responsive grids. I have a simple button to create simple buttons, but I don't think I use that. I have a divider, so you can add a horizontal rule. There you go, and drag it wherever you want. That was free. I can't remember who. Oh, one little designer again. And that, if I remember rightly, is completely free. You can get it from his website. Simple videos for loading YouTube videos, etc. I haven't used it, but I've installed it, and I think it's free. That is by, it says unknown, so I'm not sure. Although the tag is 1LD, so it might be one little designer again. Then typography, which is to do lots of things with text, such as fancy headers, do lots of sort of customizations to your text, including a great stack here for creating custom buttons. Then I have XL, which is so it adds like a little full screen button to open your website full screen. I use that, but I've taken it out because I don't think really anybody tends to use it. And image caption. This is another good one. It is free and it's by Joe Workman. And this is really, really handy because I often want to add a caption underneath a photograph. Such as on my About page, I have a huge body of text, and then I have my university graduation photograph, and I wanted to have the text saying what it was and the date it was taken. Now, you couldn't use you cannot use this image. If I dragged image in and I drag an image on here, look down here, no caption options. So the way around that is a pity it's not built into the image stack within Stax3 itself still. But the way to get around it is you can get this free stack wherever he's gone, image caption, drag him on. Now you drop your image here just like you do with the image stack. Then here is text underneath and you can type your caption underneath like I've done on my About page. And if I remember rightly again, that is a free stack from Joe Workman. Do I recommend it? Yes, because RapidWeaver 6 itself is a great program, but it relies heavily on just using other people's third-party templates or the templates that come with it. The customization options really aren't all that handy, are not very flexible. Really, if you are going to splash out the money on RapidWeaver 6, Stax3 is a must. It makes it so much more flexible, it gives you so much more control. It's an absolute must. The downside, of course, is you're already paying quite a lot of money for RapidWeaver 6. You're then going to have to go and pay even more money for Stax3. It's not free, so it does mean spending more money. However, if you have got Stax2, if you already own Stax2 with a valid serial number, you can get Stax3 at a discounted price. Now, Stax2, I believe, worked with the old RapidWeaver 5. This does not. It's more up to date. So if you use RapidWeaver 5, now might be a good time to upgrade because RapidWeaver 3 does require RapidWeaver 6 and higher. You must have RapidWeaver 6. You cannot use this on RapidWeaver 5 or older. So that's something to bear in mind. If you're a developer still using RapidWeaver 5, don't bother buying Stax3 unless you're going to upgrade to RapidWeaver 6. So just before I go, I'm actually going to go to YourHead.com, which is the company that makes Stax3, YourHead Software, and show you their page and make sure I haven't missed telling you about anything. Okay, responsive, columns and images are resizable and stackable, except, like I say, I don't find that to be a case with grids, but columns and images are meant to be completely responsive now. Build pages faster with partials. Yep, I was going to mention partials. I need to go back to that. I'll do that in just a second. All new blazing fast library is meant to be a lot quicker and snappier, and it is. Everything loads a lot quicker. It's nice and snappy now. You can get either free or paid for now over 800 stacks and counting. There are lots of stacks available for Stax. There is a free trial available. They also do some other things, but I've never used any of those. And blocks seem to be very similar to Stax, but I'd stick with Stax. If you get Stax, there will be a ribbon up here, a blue ribbon saying upgrade. You click that and that's where you enter your serial number. Responsive, no coding required. Add columns, images and content with ease, drag and drop. More stacks, there's over 800 stacks available. Partials lets you build pages from reusable components. It's basically creating your own templates, and it's not as hard as that might sound. It's drag and drop, everything like that. I'll show you in just 1 second. Fast, flexible library, customizable workflow, and there's new Stax API. So if you're a developer, you can create your own stacks and it's all documented. RapidWeaver 6 is required, not 5, and you also have to have the operating system OS 10, 10.9 or higher, which is 9, I think if I remember rightly, was Maverick, so you need Mavericks or higher. And if you have Stacks 2 and you have a valid serial number, it costs $25 US. If you don't, it's $50. So $50 if you're a new customer, $25 if you're upgrading. So what are partials? They're templates. So if you have a set of things that you reuse but change just a little bit, like change the text a little bit, whatever, on a different page, and you want to use basically pretty much the same sort of stack of stacks, if you see what I mean, on multiple pages, you can turn it into a template. So let's have a go. In fact, let me create a new page. Here we go. Let's create 3 columns. Now, let's say we want text. Whoops. Text. And whoop. This is probably why I should have it as a sidebar. Okay. Now, okay. Basically, what I've created is basically what I've created here is, it's been very stubborn. Okay. I'm not sure why I can't drag that last one underneath the left image stack, but anyway, you see what I was trying to do there. What I was trying to do is create image, caption, basically image, caption. Not sure why the text wouldn't drag under the last one, but you see what I was trying to go for there. Now, say we want this same layout, and this is basically a template, and we want this same content used multiple times on a page or on multiple pages. We can click partials. There we go. We basically have our own stack that we can reuse. We can then name this 3 column images. Not very original, but just rushing here. Whoops. Oh well. Spelling don't matter. Typos. Okay. We can put our author. We can even give it a sub description, and we can give it up to 2 different tags, such as columns. I don't know. You can give a couple tags anyway. Now we can pin and unpin. So say these were headings and we want the headings to stay the same on every page every time it's used, we can pin them. But say we wanted these down here to be the content that changes depending upon where it is on the page, when you use it, what pages, we can unpin them and they become editable text areas, as you can say. Whereas these will not be editable, they will be basically locked in until you edit the partial. So here we go. We can now have this. On this page, add an image, add an image, add an image. Though we would have done that before we locked it, of course. That's a mistake I made. But yeah, you would put the images in and lock them, and then those images will not change on any page. Then we can edit these. So this can be 1 here, 2 here. Then when we drag it from the library, here we are. Then when we drag it onto another page, we would have the same 3 images because they are locked, but this we can change and it will say 4, and that won't change it over here because it's locked. It's unlocked, so it's different each time. But these, if we went into the partial and unpacked it, then edited it and changed these images, they would change for every single instance on every page. I think I I think you can see what I'm getting at there. These are pretty much standard things, such as different ways to view your stack pages. Down here, these are actually very similar options to what you'd have on a regular RapidWeaver page. You have things like bold, italic, alignment, fonts, and color, change the font color, and you can select some text, link it or unlink it, select an image, make it into hyperlinkable, etc. So, yeah, you have RapidWeaver 6. Really, you almost have no choice. You really must get Stacks 3. So I hope this little sort of brief tutorial and review have been helpful, especially seen in action. There is a free trial available from their website. Please like and share this video, and if you could do me a huge favor and subscribe to my YouTube channel, because it only takes a few seconds and will help me out a lot. Thanks.